Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, switching to my radio voice. And today I have with me John Loeber, co-founder and CEO at Limit. John, thank you for joining me today. How's it going today?
It's going great. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be on.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And special thanks to Broker Brett, who made the introduction this time. Um, we're recording on July 12th. So I've spent this whole week telling people I hope you had a great 4th of July holiday. Running out of time to use that line because it'll be more than a week by Monday. But normally I break the ice a little bit over the weather. So here in Atlanta, Georgia, we have been in the high 90s for like a month now. How is New York looking in July?
Hot and humid, that's for sure. Inescapable, you might say. Kind of the New York July is sort of a stereotype of itself in itself.
All right, perfect. So, John, we always give the guest the chance to give the elevator pitch. What is Limit?
Yeah. Limit is basically a digital platform that gives insurance brokers AI tools to make their day-to-day lives easier. Our mission is to help insurance professionals everywhere kind of do deals faster, better, cheaper, and enable them to take care of all of the tricky nuance and otherwise time-consuming things that might fill their day. Limit kind of came into existence with this original observation that it seemed to be the case that insurance professionals were spending a lot of time in the kind of transactional process, taking applications, sending them back and forth, phone calls, emails, right? There's a lot of stuff there. And we thought, well, can we make that process a little bit easier, a little bit simpler, take a little bit of time off the plate of the broker and the underwriter? And so about 3 years ago, we launched a digital wholesale insurance platform where retail agents can log in, they get a universal application that works for many, many markets. They can send that to their clients. And when the application is filled out, they can get several quotes back in ideally 30 seconds. And that's been really great. And that's enabled us to really scale into hundreds of agencies nationwide. And we place many, many thousands of risks every single year via our kind of digital wholesale placement platform. But one thing that I'm really excited about here now in the summer of 2024 is that last month we launched Limit AI, which is the P&C insurance industry's first AI assistant for really for brokers and underwriters, for insurance professionals everywhere. Limit AI is kind of the natural extension to what we've built on the placement side. So Limit AI is an assistant that is super knowledgeable about all matters of insurance and is really, really great at analyzing documents. So for background, one of the kind of challenges that we're always running into is, okay, we've made the quoting super simple and fast, but people still have questions like, is this kind of edge case scenario going to be covered? And then of course you have to like download the policy and hit Control F and search for the relevant terms. Or maybe they'll want to see a comparison between 3 different quotes and you have to line them up side by side and kind of get all of the line items and figure out kind of what are all of the marginal differences and who stacks up how. And there's all of these kind of questions that are usually about expertise or text that have to be handled kind of in that insurance life cycle. And so about a year ago, we said, well, some of these AI tools are really powerful for solving some of these problems. Can we use them to give insurance professionals a big boost and kind of help them cut through these long policy forms and do these comparisons more quickly? And so we put a lot of effort into that, and the answer turned out was yes, we could. And that came to be Limit AI, which is now being used by many brokers all over the country. And we're really excited here as it's kind of the early days of rolling it out. And we're seeing a lot of benefit for insurance professionals, whether early in their career or senior, or whether handling personal lines or commercial specialty. Everybody kind of deserves an assistant that is helpful and always on and quick at turning things around. All right, I'll pause here.
All right, right. So that's a lot. Okay. So
Hmm.
the original product,
Yeah.
digital wholesaler,
Hmm.
platform. Okay.
Yep.
Um, and wholesaling generally is more like specialty insurance. So what kind
Hmm.
of risks does the platform work with? Is it only admitted? Is it only ENS? It's any types of risks.
Yeah, it's all kind of cyber, DNO, fiduciary crime, those
So
types of policies.
complex. Okay, so perfect. So the kind of the complex
Yeah.
side, DNO, ENO, that
Mhm.
type of stuff. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's of course overwhelmingly ENS. We do some admitted products there as well, because sometimes those are what's best for the client and they're convenient to place. Um, but as you can imagine, right, all of those kinds of specialty risks, historically, those would have been somewhat cumbersome to place. And so, of course, that inspires, well, hey, can we create a digital platform that makes it really easy to place these otherwise complicated policies in minutes and in a kind of streamlined way?
Okay. Um, so the new limit AI, right? Is okay, limit AI.
Yep.
So PNC's first AI assistant for brokers and underwriters. Okay.
Hmm.
So I'm a former underwriter. I'm a former underwriter, admitted.
Hmm.
In my and I've done a lot of work with brokers. I've never been a broker, but I've done a lot of the work with brokers. In my world as an
Hmm.
underwriter, the advantage was I had one set of forms, and especially in the admitted space.
Hmm.
I did it both small commercial and then middle market. Small commercial was all about speed.
Hmm.
Middle market, lots of flexibility, but the flexibility that I had still was with the same set of forms. Um, and my world, I had an amazing UA, truly amazing. Becky
Hmm.
had 30 some years with Liberty, and she could have easily ran my desk. Uh, she
Hmm.
didn't want, but she could have easily ran my
Hmm.
desk. Uh, it would have definitely been useful to have uh, to be able to run reports and things like that. To be able to have an AI that understands what Becky understood, that could
Hmm.
answer questions from the brokers, that could answer questions from me. Uh, that would have been helpful. Now, my world as an underwriter was actually a lot simpler
Hmm.
than the brokers who have to deal with 30 different set of forms, right?
Oh yeah.
Where a single risk might get, uh, you might have quotes from 5 or 6 different carriers, and there's slight differences in those quotes that make a ton of difference. And I never really understood how they managed to digest this and bring it to the client in a way that made sense to the client. Uh, and this was again in
Hmm.
the admitted world, where we use a lot of modified ISO forms. I can only imagine what
Yep.
this would be like in ENS. Okay, so for brokers using Limit AI, what does that
Hmm.
look like, right? As they're going through the quoting process, and you have 3 or 4 competing quotes, and it's time to go to the client. How does how easy is limited AI? Yeah.
It's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Um, I'll tell you here in just a second, but maybe for the audience, a picture always paints a thousand words. If you go to limit.com/AI, we've got some demo videos where we show you just how easy it is. Um, Basically, you would be on Limit AI, you click a button that says compare quotes, for example, and then you just upload your quotes, and maybe you'll add a little comment like, hey, please um, do a general comparison, or please compare specifically the terms of the business interruption coverage, or something like that. And then it goes and it thinks, and 30 seconds later, you're going to get a really fulsome response that kind of tells you everything that you need to know. It's really just as easy as that. You give it the documents, you give it a tiny bit of guidance on what it is you're looking for, and you're off to the races.
Okay. Um, in the legal field, actual
Hmm.
lawyers who somehow passed the
Hmm.
bar in law school before that have gotten in trouble for letting ChatGPT do the work and then finding out that later, after they've submitted it, that it wasn't done properly, that it hallucinated cases that didn't exist or misquoted cases, that kind of thing. How how does Limit AI, like, how well does it understand the insurance, because it is ultimately a legal contract, and how do
Hmm.
you make sure that it's not hallucinating?
The answer to that, I think, is the bulk of our engineering work. Really is what it is. Because you're exactly right. These are legal contracts. It really matters that you're right and that you don't make mistakes. And so internally, that's one of the kind of big focuses for us. And frankly, it's a big part of the defensibility of our product, right? That when you use Limit AI, you can trust that it's not going to mess up, because we've just put so much time into one, programming it with the insurance specific context, and then two, having done all of this validation work to make sure that it never goes off the rails. And so that's kind of priority number one for us. Like um, sometimes I think people would make fun of somebody who expresses kind of a perfectionist view, but like really, it's got to be perfect, right? It can't make mistakes. And so we've gotten it to a place, and it took us a long time, where we feel very, very confident about the results that it provides. And that also enables us to kind of use it very heavily internally. And we haven't run into any problems there.
Fantastic. So I always like looking at the website.
Hmm.
I the video demo. I love
Hmm.
how simple English, how like natural language it is, right? So you upload the quote. Is
Hmm.
business interruption included, right? And it answers you like Becky would, basically.
Right.
But it doesn't take 45 minutes to read it like a human.
Hmm.
Uh, or the whole compare quotes. Super, yeah. That has to be super useful. Um, it, so it speaks insurance.
Hmm.
This is interesting. I had not thought of this. So it's integrated to AM Best ratings, surplus lines tax rates, and regulatory requirements, which I've never worked ENS, but my understanding is that it's a nightmare. NAICS
Hmm.
and SIC industry classifications, and 10,000 plus forms. Okay,
Hmm.
so we don't have to upload everything. We can upload the quote. It has all that insurance background. Um,
Right.
okay, can compare documents. Very cool. Um, okay, so leverage your own data. Limit AI
Hmm.
optionally enables technology forward insurance brokers and carriers to use AI with their own data. Okay, so help me
Hmm.
understand that. Um,
Yeah.
wh- how is that different from the standard version of Limit AI, and what can I do with it?
Yeah. Well, if you I think the big differentiation for a lot of insurance firms, whether they are carriers or brokers, is that they have a tremendous amount of in-house expertise. And they have a particular way of doing things, right? Like XYZ brokerage, they're going to have certain gold standards around what they consider to be good coverage for certain lines or certain like types of clients. They have all kinds of internal best practices and kind of the XYZ brokerage way of doing things, right? Everybody's got their own flavor here, and that's how they differentiate in the market. And so I think for any insurance organization that is really serious about using AI and using that to kind of empower their staff, they would want the AI to answer in their way, right? So, for example, when you're using Limit AI today, it answers with like the Limit accent, call it, right? It's got our kind of internal views on what constitutes good coverage, or how best to answer certain questions, for example. But those views from us are not going to be the exact same as the views of say some other brokerage or some carrier. So it's important that they are able to kind of use whatever data they think is important to kind of give the answers their kind of the flavor of their firm.
Perfect. Yeah, and everybody thinks that they have their own secret sauce, in-house culture, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very cool. All right. So it's a super cool idea.
Thank you.
Chances are we're running on crappy systems, right? Uh, chance like on the carrier side, best case scenario, maybe they're on Guidewire, Duck Creek, something along the lines. Maybe Socotra, like some fully modern system. And broker side, Epic, or I don't know if it's whatever systems. We have lots of technical debt in both carrier and broker side. What is the implementation like for this state of the art system? How do we plug into it if we decide to go with something like this?
Great question. The short answer is it's a fully standalone service, and that's on purpose, right? Because just as you said, there are all of these systems. Oftentimes, integrations are quite difficult, right? Like some AMSs, for example, really, really tricky to get an API connection with. And so it's important to us to have something that people can just log in online. They don't need to install anything. They don't need to integrate it with anything else. They can just log in, click go. That's really important. Now, because we're recording this here in July, and this is coming out in September, one of the things that we'll be working on that timeline is a deep email integration. So imagine that you're a broker, you're an underwriter, you've got all of these emails that contain, all of these pieces of information on all of these clients. Wouldn't it be neat if you could have all of that information at your fingertips, right? And you could just type in, hey, where am I at with client XYZ? And you get an immediate answer instead of having to hunt and peck through your emails. Or if you can ask, for this client, what deals did I miss out on last year, or things like that, right? You can harness all of the data that's sitting in your emails that otherwise would be difficult to search through. And I think that integration is actually, in some respects, it's tricky, but it's pretty tractable for us. We're going to put the time in, and I think when we have that integration, that's going to be really, really powerful, and I think that's going to be really popular.
And that's coming out this year.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What is the pricing like?
Yeah. It's kind of standalone software product, right? So it's just priced on a per seat per month subscription basis. Um, and candidly, like it's early days here. We launched the product like 2.5 weeks ago, so we're still kind of figuring out the
Oh
exact
wow.
right pricing. Yeah. But basically, we think that at the price points that we're kind of thinking about, which is similar to what you might pay for an AMS, for example, um, it's a compelling product, right? It saves you a lot of time, and kind of the economics of it are a no-brainer, right? If you're saving a couple hours a week of time, and you're able to also offload some of the most laborious and kind of energy consuming tasks, um, you do the math on kind of the monthly savings there, and you easily come out ahead.
Okay. So I'm always curious on the origin story, and I always have the guest
Hmm.
LinkedIn pulled up. Uh,
Hmm.
so you've got a University of Chicago degree in statistics and computer science, um,
Hmm.
and uh, intern for an algorithmic trading company, research
Hmm.
assistant for the Department of Economics at Harvard. So you're very much a quant slash computer science guy.
Yeah.
Um, and so it looks like you graduate and you go into a well-known insurtech over, I believe, on the cyber side of the game.
Yep.
Uh, and how how did the idea come for? So that's where you learned insurance. How did the idea
Hmm.
come for Limit? How did you realize this was something that was needed?
Yeah. I think I can go into my personal background a little bit more there.
All you want.
So yeah, my academic background is in machine learning. I that It was funny in 2013, which was when I took my first ML class in that spring. There was this kind of wave of interest in machine learning that at the time felt like a huge hype cycle, but now it's in retrospect it's just a total blip, right? It wouldn't even register on anybody's radar comparatively. Um, but that got me interested. I thought it was broadly, I just thought it was fascinating that machines could, learn things and act in ways that occasionally seemed intelligent at the time, and much more so today. And it's funny, the around that time, I think it was in 2014, the first actual like generative AI papers came out. Ian Goodfellow's work on generative adversarial networks for, I think it was image generation at the time. And I thought that stuff was really, really interesting. And that kind of got me to dive a lot deeper and build out the CS and the math theory. And when I was coming out of school, I wanted to apply my ML interests, and I'd also been interested in pricing risk in financial markets. Like I thought, maybe I'll go trade options or something. And then I got into all of these discussions about pricing cyber risk, right? Cyber insurance. And I thought, okay, well, here's a new field that seems to maybe have some risk dynamics governing it that are very different from other lines of insurance. That seems interesting. Why don't I take a stab at that? And so that was Coalition. It was there for 3 years. It was my first experience in the insurance industry, and that was kind of very, very interesting. Right, just early days and learning a lot, and getting some good exposure to all of these different facets of the kind of insurance life cycle. And then eventually I was always determined to start a company, and I was kicking around some ideas with some friends. Most of those ideas were just like terrible. But eventually dawned on us, wait a moment, we know a lot of stuff about insurance. Why don't we go and take a look at what we can do in insurance? and then it's kind of the pitch is similar to what I told you at the very start. We just observed like there seemed to be a lot of emails and a lot of paperwork, right? It seemed that all of these brokerage tasks were really important. They occupied this kind of like key moment in the kind of process of placing insurance. But can we get 10 emails down to 2, right? Can we get a 4-day quoting turnaround down to 4 minutes optimistically? And we thought there'd be a good opportunity to do that, and particularly kind of in this wholesaled way, because the wholesaler is, as an intermediary, kind of one that traditionally has the most kind of back and forth, right? The most paperwork, right? Like you've got kind of comparative raters and such that have made it easy in some personal lines or even some very small commercial lines, and so there the problem is a little bit more solved. But when we were looking at the specialty stuff, it was like, geez, that's a lot of work. And so that was the inspiration for Limit. We started the company kind of in Q1, Q2 of 2020, spent a couple months building out an MVP, and then got to market. And then, of course, that whole approach was actually quite successful. We built a pretty significant book of business and got a lot of good relationships with hundreds of agencies all over the country. And that caused us to have to build out our own service team internally, because of course there's always nuance to insurance, and you can't automate everything. And then as we built out this team of experts here, we were just kind of taking a look at the day-to-day, and it's like, oh my goodness, despite everything that we've done on the technology side, our brokerage team is just awash in emails. There are just so many emails, right? There are so many questions. Can we do something to take care of that? Not just for ourselves, but also for our customers, right? Because our customers have the exact same issues, right? Whether you're a wholesaler or a retailer, you're handling emails and kind of fielding questions all day long. And so that got the ball rolling on our AI initiatives about a year ago.
Right. So I am in an interesting situation because I'm non-technical. I'm an insurance guy. I started school in computer science, but couldn't cut the math. Ended up in management information systems, and this year it seems that every other interview is Gen AI.
Sure.
So I am curious, what do you expect to see the next 5 years when it comes to Gen AI's effect in insurance? Where might it go past the tools that we have today?
I think it's a very important question. I think that the answer is going to be really high variance, right? Like change here is happening very quickly, and it's not entirely easy to predict. It's actually very hard to predict. And the tricky thing about it is that it's difficult to develop good intuition about it as well. I do a fair amount of writing on my blog. I have a Substack about AI and some technical kind of philosophical questions there. And honestly, in the course of writing and thinking about these topics, I have been wrong so often, and like wrong really quickly as well. It's like I'll express a really confident view, kind of, and I think, okay, I figured this out, and then 2 months later, it's like, oh nope, I had the wrong intuition. It's actually totally different. And so this is just kind of me backing up a second and kind of saying it's really, really hard, I think, to make like honestly confident predictions here. What is it that's safe to say? I think that there are still a lot of really low-hanging fruit in generative AI. I think that there are technical questions of just technique, how to use these things, where the general community is still very, very early, and improvements in techniques will yield like meaningfully better results in utilizing these technologies. For example, one thing that I'm thinking about here is uh, one of the big problems for using LLMs currently is using them over large corpuses of text and actually just searching that text efficiently and retrieving like relevant sections from the text. People talk a lot about retrieval augmented generation, RAG. We're still, I think, really early there in terms of kind of getting to optimal techniques. Um, and so I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, and as that low-hanging fruit gets picked, we're going to see the utilization of some of these technologies get much more powerful. And then, of course, there's the double whammy of, are we going to see a meaningful improvement in the underlying technologies themselves, right? In the like pure LLM, like GPT-4 or Meta's Llama, for example, or Anthropic's Claude. Um, that one is really tricky to answer. It is not obvious to me that scaling up these networks in size by another order of magnitude or two actually is going to have significant returns on the performance. I mean, it'll have returns on performance. Of course, it'll improve it, but I don't know if it's going to be a huge jump the way that we had from GPT-2 to GPT-3 or GPT-3 to GPT-4. But I've been wrong before, and it's possible that we'll see kind of that big leap that people are looking for. And so that's at the highest level, kind of on the actual like techniques and technology side. The effects on this of this on insurance are downstream. Um, I think in a way, it's almost predictable that the effects on insurance will come slower than the improvements in the underlying technologies, the utilization of them, because it just takes a long time for any tech to percolate into the real world, right? We got email broadly as businesses in the kind of early and mid 90s, but it took a couple of years before a lot of business became really digital first, and that became the like kind of primary mode of communication. It was a similar thing with the internet, where the adoption curve for business to actually meaningfully transition to the internet, it took a while. We saw it in cloud as well, moving computing from kind of on-prem systems to cloud systems. That was like a 15-year cycle, I'd argue. And now, of course, we're kind of in the early days of Gen AI as applied to insurance here, and part of me says this stuff is really easy to apply. It doesn't have a lot of like interoperability concerns, and so you can actually deploy it really quickly. And when you look at these super powerful technologies, you can make an argument that like this is going to change everything on a very short-term horizon. Um, but you could also say, well, realistically, until people are actually like really confident and comfortable in these tools and understand how to get the most out of them on a day-to-day basis, and by the time that they actually sign kind of like the enterprise contracts that are big enough and like run these deployments, like it actually takes a couple of years. And for example, I think that even if all AI development today were to just stop, right? You freeze DeepMind and Anthropic and OpenAI and co. Just the technological developments that we've gotten are already enough to totally revolutionize this industry. And then the question is just kind of How quickly does that percolate through? What are the obstacles for that? I think there are reasons to believe that it'll be pretty quick, just because of it's easier to integrate than like prior technologies. Um, but again, there's nuance there. There's questions, and it's possible it'll take longer. Uh, I know that I've been talking for a long time here, kind of hemming and hawing either way. I should
Uh,
pause.
no,
What do you think?
it makes sense. So the future is hard to predict, especially when it comes to AI.
Yep.
Underlying technology will continue improving, but not not sure if we'll see more exponential improvement, or if we're kind of hitting
Right.
the getting close to the limits of the recent really fast improvement. But I think the key
Hmm.
point, the two key things that I took from it, is that the technology as it exists today in its best form is more than enough to absolutely revolutionize the way that we run insurance. And super interesting,
Totally.
this that I had not heard before. Integrating it is harder. Excuse me, it's easier. Integrating is easier
Yep.
than prior technologies that we've attempted or not attempted to integrate. So no, that was a
Yeah.
great answer. Thank you so much for your time today. Part of me wishes that I was more of a technical person that could dig into it with you. Maybe I think uh, what I'm tempted of doing is trying to get a couple of two or three of the Gen AI insurtech leaders on the podcast. But how on earth would we moderate this to talk about what the future of this technology might look like? So
Yeah.
so I'll kind of play with that idea, and maybe if I do, uh, we will definitely reach out if we figure out how we would moderate that discussion. Uh,
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Mhm.
When this goes live, I will tag both you and the company on LinkedIn. And looking forward to see you guys continue to super cool that you were here just 3 weeks after launch. I basically look forward to have you back in a year or two and hear the effect that it has had, and how it's evolved, and what the clients are saying from using it. So thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, likewise. And thanks a lot for having me on. I'd love to, yeah, follow up in a year and then kind of tell you about our adventures between then and now.